to my acrylic painting show, and today is very exciting. We're going to be starting a new journal. So I would like to introduce you to Happy Little Journal. It's the same formatting as the previous journal that we were working on, but it's going to include Bob Ross inspired tutorials in acrylic paint. Now when I say inspired, I mean we are going to take the vibes and the meaning and the inspiration of the man and the painting, and then we are going to recreate that, and I'm going to give you a tutorial in acrylic paint on how you would do that. I feel like acrylic paint is more approachable for people, especially who may have busy lives. Maybe they're nervous about leaving a wet painting out. Possibly kids, pets could be in the environment. There's a lot of reasons why you would want something to dry and then you could put it away. Maybe you don't have a designated art space. All these things are reasons why I love acrylic paint, and there are so many more reasons why I love acrylic paint. And so I'm going to be kind of doing nods in that direction while leading you through my version of a tutorial inspired by the scene from the man. So today we are going to, and it's going to be from the ground up also. If you are interested in the reference photo for this, I did a screen capture from the show for each of the paintings that are going to be in the journal. There are going to be 24 pages in the journal. We're going to start in season 1. Today we're going to do episode 12 because I think it's a appropriately iconic winter scene. And on Friday we will do another scene from season 1 as well. So the reference photo is in the art community Discord if you'd like to see it under Happy Little Journal. If you'd like to know materials I'm using to help you along your painting journey, then you can check out links in the description. And I also have an ebook describing more of the details about the materials and the process there as well. If you have any questions, go ahead and let them rip. Chances are other people have the same questions too. And we will be doing these twice a week, so look forward to that. Now at the end of the completion of this journal, I'm going to be giving away the entire thing to a lucky fan. So make sure to comment, like, and subscribe to my content to be able to get an entry into the raffle. Every time you like and comment on a relevant post, that will get you another entry, and that counts for my Instagram as well. So subscribe, comment, like, you'll get an entry, and then if you tag 2 people, that will be another entry as well. It's either 1 or 2. Details are all in the description, and I'll let you just be in charge of that. Okay, so let's get to it. Now, like I said, we're going to be starting this from the bottom up, which means thumbnail sketch and restructure, because we're going to be painting this in an entirely different format. Good morning, Haley. How are you doing? So this winter scene was originally painted on like something huge, and the reason why Bob painted huge is because the way that they were filming the TV show, they had to film over the shoulder so that he could really resonate with his audience and talk to the crowd while painting, so it had to be gigantic. And so the brushes had to be gigantic, and so that's why everything's so darn big. Now, a lot of people are hesitant to like use that much paint when they get started painting. I love starting small because it's really low commitment, low risk, and a lot of people can kind of dip their toe in without being completely freaked out that they have this giant undone painting laying around in their probably living room for like weeks on end. So We're going to focus on being approachable and manageable, and when this stuff dries, which is going to be very soon after you're done with your session, you can just put it away until next time. So I'm starting with a thumbnail sketch, and it's not super precisely measured. It's just going to be approximately the dimensions that we're looking at. So that's kind of like what we're looking at here. And then I'm going to divide it into thirds going both directions. Now you want a central focal point that's somewhere in here, and you want to align points of interest somewhere in the towards the middle on the 3 quadrants. It doesn't have to be all of them. They should probably align there. And when you're talking about a painting this small, the difference between like an inch this direction and an inch that direction, you know, it really doesn't matter too much. So you can just scooch things. Sorry. Horizon line, you want somewhere in the top third for this one, and I'm going to put that tallest peak of the mountain here on this third, and I'm just going to move my way down with some small jiggy jaggies. I'm not going to be super specific. There's a second mountain here I'm going to put along this third. Oh no, my pencil. Oh good, there's still lead in there. That's nice. Possibly. Pencil didn't get the memo we were working today. All right, this one, it looks like also you have to very early in the thumbnail and the painting, you need to decide where your light source is coming from, because that's going to affect everything you do. So the light source is coming from here, so I'm just going to make a little note for myself. It's coming from the upper right. There's some wispy clouds, and those also act as lead lines, which lead your eye to the central focal point, which I haven't quite picked out yet, although I do believe it's going to be the face of this mountain. Now, the focal point should be an effect of light and not an object, because we are just attracted to light. So, okay, there, I've picked out my central focal point, and it's going to be the face of the mountain, and it's going to be aligned on this top third here. So this is going to be a deep dark. There's going to be highlight on this mountain, and then a deep dark area where it recesses and then comes back up. That one's like the shadow mountain, and then this is all very soft, comes down. So now we're done with our mountain range. The trees, I'm gonna make sure they lead up to our focal point, so I'm gonna add tree here. When you're adding like things, you want to make sure you're not creating too many patterns in your painting, because humans are really keen on picking up patterns. So you want to make sure to vary your shapes and vary your sizes on things. So I'm going to put 2 trees there, and then I'm going to bring this one big tree up into the foreground. I'm going to try not to block our interest point here of that dark shadowy mountain. And I'm going to vary the branch placement coming all the way down to here. Now there is a lake or very slow moving creek that comes into the foreground. There's going to be a lot of simplification that happens in these paintings. Not only are we're reducing the scale, so we have a lot less canvas to cover, but we want to avoid so much repetition of shapes. And I know that he was just using repetition of shapes in order to cover canvas in a small amount of time. So he already had his brush loaded. and was just going for it, because, you know, doing a painting that big in a half an hour is no small thing. I'm going to change the shape of the bank a little bit there and bring it up, because I don't want those two areas meeting, like pointing at each other. I want them to both have a little bit of space, and that makes this creek area look like it's meandering through the seascape. This is all fuzzy back here. It's all foggy. Distant shrubs on the horizon there, and I'll put those distant shrubs back here too. And then instead of there being a tree on the left side here, which is kind of vague, he doesn't pop too much. I'll bring that over. Yeah, this guy, see him? We're gonna put him over here so he has a little bit more room to be himself and to breathe. And so that we can see his structure a little bit, because he's gonna be in front of that lit up mountain back there. And this isn't his final form, this is just what's happening right now. When the paint comes to the material, then things are gonna change. Okay, a little bit of foreground grasses in the front, and then that is our completed thumbnail. So I sometimes like to remind myself where the primary focal point is with a warm colored marker for where the warm areas are gonna be, and it's gonna be here. And then, you know what, maybe we'll highlight just a little bit of the water there. Light coming in this direction could possibly hit the water there and there. Darker areas will be here, darker, cooler areas. Back sides of the tree, these guys here. So we're going to talk about color composition for a little bit. You want your scene to either be predominantly cool or predominantly warm. That way it sets the other side of the spectrum off. So if you have something, for example, if you have a scene that's predominantly cool, such as a snow scene, if you put a little pop of warm in there, it's going to really radiate brightness. So we're going to pop a little bit of warm on the mountain, and this is going to be predominantly cool. So now we're ready to go to our paper. I'm going to ditch the pencil because I'm pretty confident with our layout, and I can kind of eyeball the thirds, but you may not be so comfortable, so do what you are comfortable with. If you need to lay everything out in pencil and then ink it, it is important to erase every pencil line that you don't want, that you would not be happy with being permanent. So just keep that in mind. Here's about a third, and here's about a third. So I'm going to do my best to transfer my thumbnail on here, but it doesn't need to be exact because there's no firm rules. It's just a guide to keep you on track, to make you confident enough to do the task, to not be scared. It's kind of like putting on your phone GPS when you're pretty sure you know how to get there, but you just need a little bit of a, well, I guess he would be like a co-pilot or a wingman or something like that. So here's another hill and a hill shadow, but not as dark as that. And then this is pretty medium range also. Okay, I'm pretty happy with those mountains. Here's going to be our little wispies. I'm going to vary up the wispies though. There's a lot of really consistent patterny shapes in the inspiration art. So I'm going to vary up the clouds and the cloud positioning too. And I'm going to make sure that they lead our eye to the focal point. Okay, now the ground, middle ground. Here creek. Now when you're working on such a small composition, you can misplace things pretty easily, and it's like, whoa, there's no more space for this now, whatever this may be. And you know, it's okay to simplify down. You don't have room for a bush or a tree that you were originally going to put in on your thumbnail, then maybe that's okay. Maybe something else can be a more dominant shape. This is going to be our medium tree. That's the spot for him. Supportive roll tree, and then here's our little open branchy boy. Little baby tree. I try not to make everything so straight lately, but you know what? It's a hard habit to break. So here's a little trick that I do to vary up the shapes of branches without making them so like stacked, kind of like those artificial trees you buy at Sears instead of a real Christmas tree. Instead of going out, you do a zigzag. So you zig this way, and then zig all the way that way, and then zag this way, and then zig this way, and then go like that all the way down. And then you have more holes. So then you can kind of fill in where it makes sense to you. But it will help you vary up your shapes. And then a little bit full at the bottom. That's going to be covered in snow. Okay, looks good. I'm going to bring the branches over the creek a little bit here. All right, now that is our transfer of the thumbnail onto our media board, whatever it is that you're using. So now we got our reference, thumbnail, transfer. If you use pencil, remember you're going to want to erase that. So next step in the process is going to be the underpainting. So it is time to get out the paint. I don't know where I'm going to put my mug. Okay, here we go. I like to start with a warm underpainting these days. It really uses the slight transparency of the acrylic paint and the vibrancy of the white paper, canvas, or what have you to create a luminous effect, and I dig it. I'm definitely thinking we're not going to be using any cadmium red today. And get our titanium white out. This yellow here is cadmium yellow light. Let's see, what are we going to use for our warm glow? Is it going to be pink? Is it going to be pink, or is it going to be orange? It could be orange, that's okay. Don't want to carry it away and make them all pink. That's an easy thing to get carried away into doing. So that color right there is quinacridone nickel azo gold. This right here is cerulean blue. Today we're using primarily Winsor & Newton professional acrylic paints, but if you want to bump the quality down, I would still recommend the Amsterdam acrylics in the Expert, not the regular Amsterdam. The Expert quality ones are quite good. I was pretty pleased with those, especially the hot colors. Here's our ultramarine blue. I just happen to have it in golden today, although I don't usually use those. Not even a little bit. Okay, now I'm going to use my big filbert brush. Get some water on that guy. barely touch that gold color, and I'm going to apply that lightest highlight down on the sun-facing side of the mountain. And this part really doesn't have to be so precise at all. You can just kind of get it on there. You can use a smaller brush if you want, but it's kind of nice to be vague and loose on this step. I'm going to add darker orange on the parts that are shadowed, kind of reinforcing my values that I have put down. This, I suppose, would be shaded. If the sun is hitting that mountain back there, then the shadows would be going that direction. So this bank would be darker, which is fine because it will pop our highlights out further. You can't have everything being bright. I think that's a Bob Ross quote right there. Just you can't have light without darkness, and vice versa. This bank's going to be lighter here as we come into the foreground. And I want to leave that one bright up there and then kind of come down a little bit darker towards the base. This corner being darker because it's behind the tree. And then I want the sky and the water to be the lighter yellow. Now I want to make sure that all the little pieces of white are covered up. It's not as important in a winter scene, but it is going to be more important on scenes that are not predominantly white. You don't want little flecks of the board that you're using to show. This doesn't look as complete. You'd rather it be like a little pop of warm color. Okay, that's our completed underpainting. Now we're going to be done with this big filbert brush. Okay, so I'm going to work just like Bob from back to front on this one. There isn't going to be a whole lot of negative painting. I'm going to mix some cerulean blue and some white for the sky, but I'm going to let it be a little bit warmer as it comes to the side that the sky is on. So the diffusion is going to work from this side and then be a little bit darker here. And when you're painting a sky, it's never the same color throughout the entire thing. It's never like just blue. It's always going to be lighter wherever your sun has been last. So wherever it last set or wherever it's rising, it's going to be a lot brighter than like up in the opposite corner. I'm just letting some of those water drops dissipate and dry a bit. We're working on paper today, so it happens a lot faster than anything else you're going to use, which is kind of a perk. I'm going to grab my small filbert brush for the next step. Grab some white, cerulean blue. What I have been doing a lot lately is I am putting in a corner and then putting in the opposite corner and kind of like meeting in the middle. And also another thing I do not worry about when it comes to the sky is smooth blending. I would rather have expressive brush strokes and cloud shapes than smooth blending. just think it's part of the beauty of paint. And as long as your brush strokes are going the direction that you are intending, then they're lovely. And there's less pressure. Now if you are going for a smooth blend, then it's going to be a lot easier for you on a small piece like this. Also, blending between clouds is going to be a lot easier. Speaking of clouds, I am blending and painting all this blue around them. And when I paint in the cloud shapes, I will be painting overlapping the yellow color that's from the underpainting and over the blue that's now present. I'm going to be bringing a little bit more cerulean blue over. Well, it's a little more than I thought. There we go. Alright, now for the cloud shapes. I'm not going to bother rinsing out my brush because it's really a minimal amount of blue that's left on there. And that's fine. So now I'm just going to loosely overlap and underlap the cloud areas that we've painted around. This is going to have a light glow from that underpainting. Trying to put a little bit more paint on the side that faces the sun, just kind of brighten it up a little bit more. You see that I've painted over this tree shape right here, and that's what is nice about having a thumbnail. You can go back and reference where you put things. Alright, I feel like that does it for our cloud shapes, and also does it for our filbert brush, because everything else is too small to paint with such a round tip. So I'm going to rinse him out a bit. I'm going to switch over to small flat. now there's some gray in this mountain, so I'm going to use the orange and the ultramarine blue. See if I can get a cool gray out of that. Yep, that'll do. It's okay if during this step you overlap some of the highlighted areas, because we can go back and put that on top. No big deal. I'm aware a lot of this area is going to disappear behind this tree that's in the foreground, so I'm not going to worry about too much of that. I'm just going to loosely brush some shadow color here. Okay, now I'm going to mix the dark color, more ultramarine, or orange, less white. I'm going to try to make the edges varied. And this is not the end of their story as far as texture. We're going to go back and add more texture because the mountains are the star of the show in this one. Going to bring some of this dark color into the shadow of this neighboring mountain. I'm intuitively placing these marks. I'm not going directly off the reference or anything like that. Just putting a little rock, a little crevasse. I'm thinking to myself, like, if you were a mountain climber, would you have any chance on this one? Maybe, maybe not. Adding some texture into that deepest shadow there. Now there's a whole range to play with. Oh, that was a double entendre for anybody that didn't catch it. Now I think we just need some brighter whites. Not right up against this cloud though, because you want to have contrast between your sky and your mountain, right? I don't want it to fade right there, so I'm going to use a technique called checkering, where you just kind of alter the color of things a little bit based on what they're next to, so that stuff pops. So if it's next to a bright white cloud, you can just make it a little bit darker there, and then vice versa. If something's next to another object that's very, very dark, don't be afraid to make something neighboring be a little bit lighter. It's more important that you can see the figures that you're painting in there than the exact value from the reference photo. I'm pretty happy with the highlights on that major mountain. Major master mountain. And now we're going to go towards this one. In the beginning of the journal, I have to have the pages clipped so they don't bounce around all over the place, but does seem to get in the way just a bit. I feel like the value on that area could be a little darker. And we can vary the line there to make it sit better in the scene. With acrylic paint, you have the ability to make decisions on the fly. Because things have dried, you can just paint right over them without remixing everything. I do like me a good remix, but not in this context. I'm gonna add a little bit of texture, more texture to this mountain since I have that bright color on my brush already, and just kind of pulling it all over the place. A little over here, a little over there. Background snowbank. Is getting painted in next. I'm going to use that same color for back here. It just kind of fades into the mountain. There's a lot of diffusion back there. And I'm going to lighten up the paint on my brush and get this foreground snow in. I'm going to highlight the banks that are facing the light source. And put a little bit of light in the middle of our midground there, just to add some interest and break up this space. For our water, I'm going to make sure to put a shadow on the side of the bank that would be kind of away from the sun, so the bank would be shielding it from any kind of light. Maybe here, and definitely there. Now, since that didn't take very long, we're just going to mix that into a lighter color, and I'm going to keep my brush strokes kind of horizontal. Move my way into the foreground. Now you're going to see some areas where the value of the bank is really similar to the water that you just put down. So we're just going to do some checkering there and make sure that the values are different enough in the neighboring objects to make them look like they're separate. So I'm going to highlight this bank here. Highlight this bank here, that's facing the sun. And this here. I'm gonna put another coat of light highlight on that space again. Okay, now I might put a little bit more highlight in the middle of the water just to convey the flow of the water. Horizontal strokes. And these don't have to be everywhere, they're just to convey motion and to break up the space. Kind of keep them towards the left side also. There we go. I am seeing here that the value is a little dark on this mountain. So I'm going to brush over some paint that's very similar but lighter. Just create some more dimension. Now when that dries, we'll figure out what to do with it next, or even if we have to touch it again. Now it's time for trees. We're going to use that same gray color that we have been using, which is just the ultramarine blue and the quinacridone nickel azo gold. And mix and mix and mix. I don't like using black because it's kind of too flat of a color. I would rather all my darks either be warm or cool, depending on where they are. I want to make sure I mix enough of it to where I don't get interrupted in my process. But again, this is not a huge painting that we're doing, so The amount of paint that you mix will just come from experience. It's hard to say exactly how much you're going to need. So this is a dark, dark tree. It's our biggest tree. I'm going to make sure that the height of the tree is going to be either higher than or less than the other tallest thing, so that they aren't like conflicting with each other. I'm using my flat brush, but I am using the tip. And I'm zigging back and forth and making sure that my tree shape is interesting and not symmetrical. There are some tree species that are symmetrical. Every tree is different. Some are amazingly symmetrical. So don't let it bother you too much. Unless it does bother you, in which case you can add another branch somewhere. You can also add more bird holes to vary up the shape of your tree after it's all dry, which is going to be remarkably fast because that paper thing again. I'm changing the direction of my brush very frequently, and that is to create different patterns and shapes. And I'm not afraid to let the underpainting show. I'm just trying to make sure to cover the area where the trunk would be. And I'll get a little bushier down at the bottom. Okay, now the background trees are going to be next, so I'm going to make sure to add more white because they're further in the background. There's more diffusion between you and them. They still have to be darker than the mountain behind them though. So if you're not comfortable doing this with your small flat brush, then you can definitely switch to a point for those tiny, tiny trees, but I'm just going to use the tip, the edge. And I'm not going to worry too much about the exactness of these shapes. Just gonna let whatever happens happen. Here are the two bigger tree shapes. Definitely want to make sure these are darker than the background mountain. Varying the brush direction a whole bunch from tip to tip, and like a little tap dance. I'm deciding to put a couple more medium trees here. I do not feel like they will compete with the scraggle tree that's going to go in the front. Okay, adjusting a couple of those. I'm happy with the value. going to touch this area here again. Just putting in some bigger brush strokes. I'm making sure that it doesn't look too different than anything else that's happening there. All right, now I'm checking where the stream meets the bank, the snow bank. I'm gonna darken up the water line just a little bit. Horizontal strokes pretty much the whole way. All right, I feel like that has enough definition. Now for this last scraggle tree, I'm gonna switch to, you can either do a point if you do not have a liner, but I have a liner here by Princeton. It's a size 1, so it's kind of a tiny boy. And I'm gonna take the darkest color that we have mixed. If you don't have that anymore, go ahead and mix just a little bit more. Now you're gonna make sure that there's enough water in the paint to where the bristles are in control and not the paint. And saying that, you know, if the paint is too thick, then it kind of like overrides anything you want to do with your brush. So I'm gonna stabilize my hand with my other hand, and I can kind of just barely see where I placed this tree, and that's fine. Kind of go with your gut. I feel like the bristles are drying out too fast, you can add a little bit more water. You just want to make sure that the branches here are wider where they meet the tree than at the end. So the mass of the tree gets smaller, smaller, smaller as it goes up. Make sure, as I've been guilty in the past of making my branches too polite, where none of them were intersecting or touching each other. It's kind of a natural, but you know, sometimes I can't help myself. But you know, humans are amazing at picking up patterns. So if everything is equally spaced, and I mean anywhere, if trees are equally spaced, if rocks are equally spaced, someone will pick up on that pattern and kind of deem it as unnatural. So gonna thicken up the base of the tree here just a bit. And then I am going to use my flat to make a little bit darker snow. Just some texture. Not quite that dark. Texture and shadow. So that tree looks like it's sitting in the snow and not floating on it. Okay, see, now we are in our final pass, final moments. We can pick up some highlights and a little bit more texture on the mountain. Probably going to clean my brush out for that because you don't want any darker colors making your highlights dull. Fresh, clean, real thick paint is going to be the brightest because you're always competing with that transparency from acrylic. Make sure that our focal point is nice and bright and high contrast, which is going to be this light side of the mountain here. And I'm going to brighten up the side of the clouds towards the sun. Okay, feel like we're there. So let's check back to our original inspiration image, which is here. And then here is the acrylic version. A little bit of warmth using our techniques and palette and all of that. So I hope that you have enjoyed this tutorial, and if you did, then like and subscribe and leave a little comment for an entry into the giveaway. And I will see you back 2 days a week for more tutorials just like this, and we are going to be doing 24, so that's pretty exciting. And also going to be voting on the next subsequent pages, so that's another fun thing we're going to be doing, and that will be on YouTube on the community feed and also Instagram in the stories. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again on Thursday night for a silent stream, and then Friday morning for another tutorial.